Because sometimes when we talk about AI, we talk about blockchain, talk about all these technologies and the things that we need to be working with, it feels like, and especially in this part of the continent, it feels like they are 10 years away, but they're actually here. So we are late to the game. The other revelation that I got while I was working at Macquarie was that we spend quite a substantial amount of time talking. I worked in Macquarie for 12 years. By the time I left Macquarie, 11 years ago, I think the last 4 years or so, we were talking about, because it had become real, that we were training people in the IT faculty and they were not finding work. And so the conversation then was, how do we get people to work? So this year, I was invited by the National Council of Higher Education to talk to some of the university leaders about how do we get people to work. And I said, look, 11 years ago, I was part of you guys, and we were talking. We are still talking. And I guess for me, it was that point where I said, look, this is not for me. I need to jump ship. Because the one thing that hit me was that, and majority of my colleagues I was working with in the IT faculty, we were doing well, if I could put it that way. We were advancing, we were doing, you have masters, you go for a PhD, publishing, getting promoted. It hit me that for us to train for the industry, you need to be in the industry. So it's no longer just an academic qualification accumulation. You need to understand that trade. I remember one time I proposed that all the lecturers need to go for industrial training. And I was almost crucified because the question was, who's going to supervise me? I'm like, yeah, the student you taught who is now a manager, who has the skill, can supervise you because they understand the trade. And so the one thing that needs to happen, it has to be radical. We can't run away from it. It has to be radical. And radical in a sense that, and it's already happening elsewhere. I was reading a statistic that for the first time, the last 10 years have seen a significant decline in university enrollment in the US and Europe, and more people are opting for micro-credentials as opposed to degree programs. For the first time. What does that tell? Because the industry doesn't really care what you have now. The industry is looking for, do you have that trade? And they're investing in it. And they're saying, if you can show me you have it, I'll hire you. I will pay you. What are the universities in Europe doing, for example? Some universities have realigned the education system, and they are now allowing what they call credit transfer. So if you have a micro-credential certification, they are saying, you bring it, we'll look at what content you've covered, and then you can complete your qualification. That means that we need to be agile. It is not possible in our environment where a review of curricula can only happen after 5 years. If you look at the education, I mean, if you go to the National Council of Higher Education, if they approve a new program, you can only submit it for a review and reapproval after a window of 5 years. And the argument is that you need to run a cycle, which is 3 years, people graduate, complete, and then assess that cycle for you to know if this curricula requires to be changed. Now, in the IT space, 5 years is a lifetime. To be honest, 5 years is a lifetime. I remember writing a curricula to Nation, and it was sent to the regulator for review. And they were proposing, they returned the curricula with a requirement to include a certain course. But the technology they were asking us to use, industry had stopped using it 7 years ago. So what am I trying to say in this whole rambling that I have? Is that at leadership level, we must be open to new models. We must be open. Number two, we must stop talking and do something. I've been doing something at Refactory for 5 years, and I can tell you, I've trained close to 700 young people, and I have placed close to 90% in work. So there is something that is working. Now, the question is, in the mainstream education, nobody's going to look at me and accept what I am doing. Because I was asked by one of the people in the education, are you regulated? I said, you can't regulate what you don't understand. What I'm doing can't fit in any current accreditation framework within government, within the Ministry of Education. It can't, so I can't award a certificate. I can award a certificate of attendance because it's a certificate anyway, it's a certificate. But I tell the students that my only accreditation body is the employer. The day they stop hiring our students is the day I have no work. So if I can place you into work, you have been accredited. That's my trade. The second thing that needs to happen is that we need to be very intentional and create an incentive for industry to be part of this game. In Europe, in the US, they have created positions of what they call professors of practice. So you're not a professor by publication, you're a professor because you have the practice, you know that trade. And that's how innovation happens. The unfortunate bit here is the assumption that innovation happens in vacuum. No, innovation happens out of practice. So we need to create openings for industry to infuse in our education system. The third is that it is important, and I hope I'm not taken out of context. It is important that those that are in positions of authority to create space for the guys who think radical. I couldn't stay in the mainstream university because for me I was bored. And every time I got bored, I tried to do something. I see my brother there at the back, Kwame. I kept on trying to bring industry, but then I realized I was bringing industry into a space that is quite rigid. And I said, I can't stay here. I will run. Mad? So I chose to go and change myself. And I'm happy. And Priscilla, one of the things I would say is that one thing I've come to learn is that the only way you prove that you're changing is if you're doing something. And I tell people that even if I'm able to find one person into work, get one person into work, I'll sleep comfortably.